First off, I'd like to state that, in my opinion, I believe muckraking was the first reform to journalism that follows all 9 basic principles of journalism. And in addition, I think it intersected a lot with legal and political spheres within society. It helped create the Food and Drug Act, and it helped change the way senators were elected to office. Continuing on from that, I think muckraking faced a lot of ethical dilemmas. I believe it is more motion towards professional, social, and political dilemmas than it was personal, even though someone could argue with me saying there's a lot of personal dilemmas that a journalist would have, thinking that what would this story do to my credibility? But thinking more on the personal, social, and political dilemmas, journalists had to wonder what would this story I'm writing do to the professionals I'm writing about, and how would society react and handle this story? And more importantly, capitalizing on that is, would this change society? I think that's a huge dilemma that muckrakers faced when writing stories. How would it change society? I think they knew it would change society, but I don't think they ever expected new laws and regulations to come out from their writing. One example of this is the article series that Upton Sinclair wrote in the Appeal to Reason. Sinclair faced a lot of, I think, social dilemmas, saying how would all these stories I'm writing about food and drug change society? And his writing was so persuasive that it surpassed those dilemmas and created and made President Roosevelt conduct his own investigation into this issue, and the outcome was the Food and Drug Act. Another great example of this, I think, was William Randolph Hearst, who exposed the corruption of senators, how state legislators were electing senators and controlling them. And his writing also surpassed the dilemmas he was facing. And I think the biggest dilemma he was facing were political. He was trying to get past, like, how would this dilemma really affect what was going on in society? And he became so persuasive that he basically helped create a new amendment that senators are elected through popular vote and not through state legislators. And continuing on from this, I think muckrakers like Sinclair and Hearst justified their ethical dilemmas and getting past ethics with social agreement. They chose these stories that they were telling and thought they were social agreements between them and the American people, and that the population needed to know about this. It wasn't just them wanting to talk about it or say anything about it. It wasn't just their opinion. They believed that America may share the same views on it. I also think that muckrakers practiced a lot of deontological ethics. They thought they created their stories to have right or good relationships among the American people. I think a great example of this was the writing from Ida Tarbell, her practices of ethics and journalism. It was so compelling to American readers, she became idolized throughout the population. Now, as I said before, I believe muckraking follows the 9 principles of journalism to an exact T. It stayed loyal, and it told the truth to its readers and the citizens. It maintained discipline and independence from what it covered, what it was talking about. It provided a lot of discussion and criticism and compromise throughout society. And one of the bigger ones, I think, is it was written to be interesting and significant. All these stories we read about weren't small. They were actually huge. They blew up as soon as the first article came out. And the last one, it stayed readable to all people and maintained its ethics. That's what I'm talking about. It maintained all the muckraking stories we've read about, I believe, have maintained the ethics throughout the series of articles. And also they maintain readable by all people or classes of society. A modern day example, I think, of this is not a book, or is not a newspaper or a magazine, but a book written by Bob Woodward called The Title is Fear Trump in the White House. It talks about how Trump cabinet members and advisors call the work culture in the White House toxic, and President Trump is unstable and uninformed. I believe this is a great modern day example of muckraking, because it talks about how he has interviews, and Woodward conducted his own interviews about the workplace in Trump. It's accounts. It's the truth from or it's so-called the truth, even though Trump calls it the truth, but most people believe it is the truth. Though I haven't read the book, I can't say for sure if it is muckraking, but from what I heard, that's what it sounds like. And I've got this, I got all this information from a New York Times article. And I think to end, I think a good question to be answered is, did muckraking really reform journalism, or was it just seeking the truth? And my answer is, muckraking didn't really actually reform journalism and the way journalism should be written, but it changed the way journalism was read and the way it was thought of. It was to show a new perspective on a topic and find the truth behind the issue at hand.